ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide, gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature is on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the New Now from the New Agora. I'll remind everyone, check us out, newagora.ca. We've been publishing there for almost 15 years. I'm here with Iam Saums, his pen name, and I was going to say just about every article he's published there, but I would say every single article that Iam has ever done, as far as I'm aware of them, he has graciously allowed us to share on newagora.ca. And hey, Iam, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good. Super good.
So
I'm
grateful that you guys run the articles for sure.
There's not so many people whose articles I'll put up, sight unseen, pretty much, with the intelligence of my heart that says, let's go for it. And which brings me to today's topic. I've been up early. I always get up 4 or 5 a.m. and I putter around, my neighborhood and my dreams in my life. And my intuition told me today we should discuss intuition.
Oh, good one.
So according to what you would say, what would you define intuition as, Iam?
To me, intuition is like a bolt of lightning in many ways. You can look at it from a metaphysical standpoint that the intuition is the relativity that we have with the universe and our soul, and how our intuition seems to become stronger and more profound and more expanded with the alignment and with the empowerment of the centers of our being.
That's a great definition.
Yep. To me, I've gotten to a practice of intuition, whether it's writing or whether it's the ceremonial things that we do, or meditation or music. All of those things help me to practice being in. Interestingly enough, the newest article I'm working on after the Event Horizon is called Flow. And so it all comes into the, not necessarily definition, but more of an understanding of the flow that allows our universality to move through our centers into our awareness and our understanding, and ultimately empowering our expression into the world.
Right. Great definition of intuition. What would you say, or where do you think intuition comes from?
It's, in my understanding, in my experience, intuition is the communication that occurs between our soul and the rest of our being. To me, the strongest intuitions come when there is that alignment and that centering and groundedness in my being with all the centers. And there's also a necessity for a presentness of being within all of that allows for the intuition to communicate what our soul is empowering us with, or what the universe is empowering us with as human beings.
Well, how would you say, which I feel is very important these days to, the listeners, and something I've been getting into some, let's say online debates at the bottom of some of the videos I've done, the difference between thoughts and intuition?
Oh, that's a good question. Intuition, in my opinion, is very distinct from thoughts. Thoughts are something, are seemingly a construct or a projection of our minds. Clearly and obviously, that's an evident reality that we're all pretty much present to and aware of. Intuition is something that's so much more expansive, and it goes beyond the realm of thought or mentality, in my opinion. And intuition is something that allows us to expand even our mind. So the thoughts that we are experiencing with our mind from the mundane to the extraordinary, those are all being potentially empowered by our intuition, by the universe. If we're willing to align ourselves and clear ourselves from all the peripheral environmental things that we go through on a daily basis. The biggest step in being able to be connected with the intuition, in my opinion, is to be able to clear out all of the instinctual and all of the intellectual malaise, so to speak, that we gather, either consciously or unconsciously or otherwise, through the course of our days. And those are the things that take us away from intuition. And as a human being, it's my opinion that our intuition is always leading us. It's there, present, it's
leading us. Did you say leading us?
It's leaving us.
Leaving.
It's leaving our awareness because of the social reality construct in which we live. So social reality imposes its influence, and it imposes its, in my opinion, delusion, which leads to psychosis. I think social reality, in essence, through the mind and through the body, or the instincts and the intellect, ultimately lead to pulling us away from our intuition and our soul. It's just its very nature. It's part of the prison that is social reality. And you and I've talked about this before, and I've wrote about it in articles, that I'm not a big fan of social reality. A lot of people can acknowledge a lot of things in social reality that may give them good feelings, or may give them good thoughts, or may give them even sensual experiences or whatever that are beyond our normal awareness. But social reality is something that is so impositional, aggressively by nature and design, engineered by people that want to break the connection that we all have with intuition. So intuition, I believe, works in a way where it empowers the heart center and the emotions and the emotionality that we experience. And it also empowers our thoughts to create insights and epiphanies so that we can transcend above the mundane and ordinary perceptions that we tend to carry or adopt through the course of our lives, or even on an instinctual level. It helps us to transcend above the instinctual experience of being human in a physical body.
Yeah, I find that that's amazing. I like that the word stink is an instinctual. So to me, that's kind of a tell as well, an intuition going into it. So it's important from the perspective, like I misheard you say leaving, and I thought you said leading. So I would feel that it's important for, instead of intuition leaving us, it should be leading us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we have it backwards. That was a good point you made, in that intuition would increase the potential for your thought process if you were using, that part of you to create, to imagine, to design, because that would be good. You can design things with your imagination, and you are using, seems like it's coming from up here anyways. So instead of it using you, you're using it by letting intuition lead you towards a better thought process than being inculcated, as you said, by society's evil, is how I'll put it, that lead you towards the toilet pits of nonsense, let's say.
It's in my opinion, it's like, whether it's instinctual, intellectual, or emotional, it's very toxic. Social reality tends to have a very high level of toxicity that spins people out in many different ways. And we've seen that over the last 3-4 years, through the whole pandemic thing, where, like we've talked about before, in my opinion, it was an opportunity for us to connect with our intuition, and it was an opportunity, like you put it, which I think was brilliant. Instead of our intuition leaving us all the time, our intuition is leading us, because ultimately it's the intuition that is the channel through which insights, wisdom, epiphanies, transcendence, transformation all comes from our soul and from the universal level, so that we can empower those elements and aspects of our being to be able to transcend above the social reality in which we exist.
I mean, I think it's just been easy. I mean, for me, I can only talk about myself because things have gotten so nonsensical over the last 3 years, like ridiculous to the highest of levels. Someone sent me a video from the United States, about canceling one of the Christmas songs because it was, sexist or racist. It was like baby it's cold outside, and instead the number one song that for a few months that at that time period was singing about a lady's private parts, right, and what some guy wanted to do to them, or something.
Oh,
And that,
yeah.
yeah, and that was a number one song, whereas this one, people were getting angry that it was racist and sexist and all the other BS stuff that's been going on these days. So when you sit down and you look at the world, like you said, I would feel you have no choice but to trust your intuition, because if you're looking from an outside source to lead you, it's obviously, I'll say it again, it's obviously, three obviously is ridiculous. And so, this opportunity that you just mentioned to go back to our hearts, our core, our center, our intuition is beautiful. And how would you suggest, let's say, people that would like to do that are lost from that are yearning to do that, can begin to get better at accessing their soul's voice?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is breathing
Mm.
and being present and conscious to breath, and being able to express conscious breath on a daily. I mean, think about this on a daily level. Maybe not minute to minute, because that's potentially very impossible in many respects for many people because of how our environment is and social reality. But breathing is a big starting step for me personally, in the way that I attempt to walk and experience life as I go through it. Meditation is an extraordinary practice to be able to get present to and aligned with our intuition and with our soul and the universe, so that we're not just human beings bouncing off of each other and debating and all this stuff. And debating is fine, and thinking is fine, and sensual things on the instinctual level is fine. It's all a part of life. But I think there's so much of a predominant focus on those things that we lose sense of the emotionality on a transcendent level, or we lose our focus of intuition, and we lose our connection with our soul. And one of the things I was writing about in Flow just today was that at some point in time, we all eventually become separated from our soul in the universe. Most of the time, it happens in later adolescence, maybe even before then, where we have a great deal of energy, and we're from infancy all the way into early adulthood, we're transforming perpetually.
Mm.
Yeah. And then there's this decline that occurs for most people because of the construct of social reality in which we all invest and buy into, which, that's fine too. I mean, people can choose to do whatever they want. However, it's very difficult to maintain that connection with intuition and the soul on the soul level when you're putting your energy in all these different elements and domains of the social reality.
Yeah, it would seem to me you get disconnected from the battery of life, which would be the soul. And I say that's why people age some, and that's why some age less. That's why some are more energetic when they get older and can do whatever they want their whole life. And that's why others seem to curl up into a fetal position and, die unconscious in their beds. It's interesting that, you mentioned getting quiet, the breath, perhaps, I've always wondered why they spray their crazy chemtrails, and why they decided to mask people, and why there's so many pollutions and so many, and the 5Gs and the electrical thing. And I think it all has to do with dampening our breath personally, because
Yeah. I've noticed that, Lorenzo, over the last 3 years, that breathing is different. And it's not just because I'm getting older. It's the quality of air that we're breathing. But there's something about the air that isn't as enlivening as it used to be. It seems to me like with all the toxicity and whatever else is going on in dimensions and domains that we may or may not be present to, it's almost like the air, like our intuition is always leaving us. It's almost like the oxygen of the air is leaving the air. And it's hard to describe because it's something that you feel, and it's something that you sense on a level that is very distinct from daily ordinary life. But to add to the breathing and the meditation, and I was talking a little bit about it in the Event Horizon, the last article. It's a choice that people have to either be proactive or reactive in how they live their life. And so for people that live from intuition and have a connection with their soul and are empowering the rest of their being with the expression of their universality or their connection with the universe, those people are at cause. They're proactive. They're expressing and empowering with their energy that they're receiving from the universe. They're empowering their environment, the people in their lives, and themselves in such a way where that life force is always moving. It's always flowing. There's a momentum to it, to that empowerment that comes from the universe. For people that live in a reactive state, they're always, in many cases, they're always somewhat oblivious to a lot of the intuitive elements or the universal elements that can occur in our daily path. So in addition to the positive, the proactive, and the reactive, the best way that I've found to be able to access the intuition and to express the intuition is through creativity. You were talking about writing lyrics and music before we started this conversation. Anything that's creative is such an empowering experience, and it expands your understanding and it expands your experience in your existence in ways that we can't quantify, and in ways that we don't really care to quantify, because it just is what it is. It's a transcendent experience. So any transcendent experience like that, breathing or meditation, or I practice yoga every day, and I started doing it because I had sciatic problems in my back. And ever since I've been doing that every day, I no longer have sciatic problems in my back. And I was really freaked out thinking, oh, I'm going to have to deal with this pain for the rest of my life as I grow. And now I never have those experiences with the sciatic pain. So, but I mean, that's all a part of the intuition, because the practice of yoga, in my experience, and I'm not a teacher or anything like that, but I just have my own personal practice, but the breath work and the movement and the flow of that is also another experience of being able to allow the intuition to flow through us into our experience. So anything like that is an extraordinary expression of that intuition and that universality.
Yeah, it's interesting that your intuition and even the direct potential for your life is not as complicated as people make it out to be. Like social reality just tends to complicate things with a lot of nonsense. And as you've just said, you remain flexible by being more flexible, right? You remain strong by being more strong, or by becoming strong, right? You go in the right direction by choosing, or you create by choosing to create, right? And just by getting into the actions of things and not allowing, your thoughts to muddy up the waters, let's say. I mean, would you say maybe, for me, what I've seen, what you mentioned and came to me is the CO2, demonic pushing of realities these days, when CO2 leads directly to oxygen from plants, which leads directly to our intuition, as you've said, like more oxygen, better breathing. And personally, I've seen that's where magic comes from, and maybe that's what the the ankle biters, or overschmoes, or whatever you want to call them, are really after, by pushing the CO2 nonsense agenda, the very death of our intuition.
Yeah. And I think kind of like the whole conversation and concept of our intuition always leaving us instead of leading us, like you said. I think the same thing could be said for breath for most people, that we're seemingly taking in more carbon dioxide and we're exhaling more oxygen. And maybe that gets to the breath work, and maybe that gets to the nature and the quality of the air that we're breathing. Maybe it's not just the environmental elements of the air that we're breathing. Maybe it's also in how we are breathing.
Makes sense. Because when you're relaxed, obviously you take deeper breaths. When you're stressed, you have that, the in and out, the rapid breathing of fight or flight, or being a chased animal in a cave, or having stress. Obviously take a deep breath. You hear when you're stressed, and it makes a big difference. Obviously. I mean, I get angry or angrier or close to anger on the days they're spraying their nonsense in the sky. I'm sure that's for many reasons, but probably it's because there is a lack of available healthy oxygen or air in my environment, which makes me somewhat less patient, we'll say.
Yeah, that's all a part of the agenda, though, too, that you were seemingly alluding to earlier in this conversation, that there are components of our social reality that have been engineered to not just disrupt our emotionality, because in my opinion, as human beings in this social reality, and in my opinion, social reality is the wool that's pulled over our eyes when we're too young to even understand what's happening. And everybody just buys into the reality, and they just accept the wool blanket, and they just keep it over themselves for their whole lives. And then they wonder why they age like they do, like you had mentioned earlier, or they wonder how it is that they don't have a good quality of life, or that not breathing in good oxygen or whatever. So when it comes to the intuition, in my opinion, the breath is what leads to the intuition. It helps us to be able to remove the toxicity of our bodies, and then ultimately that helps us to be able to remove the toxicity of our minds, and then ultimately that allows us to remove the reactive toxicity of our emotions or our hearts. And in doing so, as human beings, from that perspective, we're able to make that connection with the intuition, and we're able to make that relativity with our soul and the universe.
I mean, maybe it comes back to what the Toltecs have said of the dreamer and the dreams, right? That I know I'm an idiot in this life. Like, I've been a fool my whole life. When I think I know better, I'm always wrong. But that's what makes you smart, is to realize you're not, right? Or that you've made so many mistakes, you've made so many blunders. I'm fooled to the very end, that when I think I know better, quite literally, it's in the words, right? Or I think I should do something, I'm generally wrong. But when I use my intuition, that's why I wanted to talk with you and have this discussion on where intuition comes from. It's always right, even when I'm wrong. It ends up being right. Even when I fail or lose money or fall down or do something silly, it always leads to something of a beautiful nature that helps, even though I'm not sure of where that's coming from. So maybe the intuition, another aspect of it, could be it's something out of time, out of linear time anyways, I would say, that helps us to move our life in a better fashion than, from point A to point B, or from birth to death. But, to maybe ascending, I've said it before, is a simple matter of just dropping your garbage, and then like a balloon, you go higher. You drop your shit, you go higher. It's not rocket science, really.
Yeah, you transcend gravity. And what I heard out of what you just said regarding the intuition is that the intuition is a stream of consciousness that is empowered from the universe and from our soul. And in my opinion, the universe and our soul is one. There's no separation, in my opinion. And so to be able to access through our intuition that stream of consciousness, and then to empower that stream of consciousness into our heart, transforming our heart and our experience so that we aren't reactive or toxic or angry or expressive in a negative way, and to be able to transcend the thought process on an intellectual level so that it's insight and wisdom and epiphany, as opposed to knowledge and blah blah blah, whatever institutionalized programming that we put ourselves through, whether it's education or religion or politics or the mainstream media or any of those things that are designed to distract and disrupt that stream of consciousness through our intuition. And then the big thing I think for most people is the instinctual level, because of the sensuality of it and the toxicity of sensuality between people and their relativity, not just with the people that they're with or relating with, but also with themselves. And that kind of goes back to the intuition and your idea of this conversation, because you really have to, in my opinion, you really have to understand yourself and who you are, not just in this reality as a human being, but who you are beyond that stream of consciousness on the soul level. You have to really understand that in order to be able to utilize your intuition to the most optimal way that we all can. And we all have that potential. I've always believed that everybody in this world is creative.
Mm.
No matter whether or not they express it or practice it or whatever, they all have the potentiality for creativity and imagination, because it's the stream of consciousness that is coming from the universe, from our universality. It's the stream of consciousness that's empowering and inspiring us to be able to express that into this world. But the thing is that people, either consciously or unconsciously, they sacrifice that ability of being able to be creative or imaginative or even inventive or innovative, because they just start to lose faith in it, or they don't have experiences that empower it further. And they don't, and a lot of the times it seems as though we don't have the follow through. We don't have enough of a focus and of an intention to be able to follow through with these things that come to us. We have all these random thoughts that, in my opinion, random thoughts that are sparks of epiphany and insight from the universe. It's our mind trying to understand something that is so far beyond its capacity.
Mm.
I've always been more inspired and empowered by emotionality as the gateway to the intuition and to the soul and the universe. In my opinion, I think that, or I feel that intellectualism and knowledge, quote unquote, is largely a bunch of bullshit. It's just all of these social reality things flying around that maybe we resonate partially with, but I think it's all in the resonance. Like, every person knows that when they get an epiphany or an insight or guidance from their intuition, you feel it, the resonance of it on the deepest level.
Mm.
I mean, it's far beyond our understanding. So for me, I don't want to know anything. I've never wanted to know anything. I don't want knowledge. I don't want to be able to sit there and have conversations in 20 years when I'm older than I am now about all these facts and histories and all this stuff that are probably best served on a dusty book on a bookshelf in the library that has been long forgotten. I want to understand, which is a very good distinction, in my opinion, where it's not about knowledge or the knowledge that we have about this world. It's about shifting that and transcending the knowledge that we institutionally program ourselves with, at university or, at a church or whatever, or in the political arena or in the mainstream media or any other thing that we are exercising. To me, it's all about understanding. And the understanding is a multidimensional experience that transcends the knowledge of the intellectualizing. And intellectualizing is a good thing. It's like what you were saying before, the distinction between the intuition leaving us and the intuition leading us forward. To me, knowledge is a good thing. Intellectualism is a good thing, but it has its place. It's like a tool. Our mind is a tool. Our heart is our body is a tool. But the thing that transcends all of those elements of our being is our intuition. That is that stream of consciousness coming from the universe that is allowing us to empower that universality into this experience.
Well, I would agree. I mean, perhaps something that's come to me over the last little while is people can't help but create, even if they're creating cages or nonsense or repetitive
Oh yeah.
foolishness. I find that it's too bad. You're a creator. You're born. That's the gift you get, the gift of life, the gift of so much time on this life. And what you do with that, is, I figure if you want to look at spirit or God or Buddha or whatever as the ultimate and beneficial benefactors, or your parents that would love you, they would give you the gift of creation and then set you free.
Oh, absolutely. And there's that statement that I heard years ago. I don't remember who said it, but there was a statement that said, "Don't be a copy, be an original." And I feel that social reality in institutionalized domains program us to be a copy
No
in
doubt.
our lives, and we're not our original self. We don't even know who our original self is for the most part, because it takes a great deal of intuitive relativity with the universe to be able to begin to understand. But here's the caveat, in my opinion, and this is the mysterious element of it all, is that you'll never even understand everything as a human being. You probably won't even understand a good portion of anything, which is kind of defeating in some respects, because um like knowledge, some of us are so focused on knowledge and learning all these institutionalized things so that we can get ahead in life and make money or buy a new house or have children or whatever. And all those are great things, but when it comes to transcending those experiences, then it's all about the understanding. And the understanding is an omnidimensional experience that we can have if we allow ourselves or empower ourselves to do so. And the intuition is what the universe uses to empower us into a transcendent and transformed life.
Yeah, I mean, people don't even get what does unlimited mean? What does infinite mean? If you consider imagination, where you can imagine anything, most people just want to imagine being taller or younger or richer or different color shoes or in better health. But maybe you can imagine wings, right? You can imagine a different reality. You can bring a different dream. I mean, it could be like nothing that's going on right now. And I feel strongly from studying past histories, there have been civilizations or clutches or agglutinizations of humanity that have done way different than the nonsense we've done over the last few hundred years. I mean, it's obvious that there's nothing but better potential or better dreams than what's going on, as you say, in a social construct right now. We can't help but to succeed by going in any other direction. I would feel, and it is the intuition. I mean, what's infinite? What is the potential? Like if there's infinite possibility and infinite choice and infinite challenge, as you say, you can't learn everything. It would be impossible by the very definition of infinity. And isn't that amazing, right? Like most people get stressed when they don't understand things or when they don't know what's coming next. But perhaps that's because they're afraid for their health or their money or where they're going to live or their children's lives or where their food is coming from or their security. And if you give all that up and trust in your intuition, as you say, instead of throwing it away and letting it lead you, who knows what beautiful and magical and amazing ways can come our way and we can live in. That's been my understanding. Anything, anyways.
It's difficult. I mean, you asked me earlier what kind of practices or what kind of things that people can do to be able to connect with their intuition. It's difficult. I mean, and it's not difficult because by nature, being connected or expressive with our intuition in the universe or our universality, that's not what's difficult. What's difficult is attempting to express that into this social reality. That's right. What's difficult. And it's also about another important thing, in my opinion, when you asked about, how people can connect with their intuition or they can expand the relativity that they have with the universe through their intuition, is they have to somehow find a way to release or remove the programming.
No doubt.
Because through all of those different domains of social reality, there's all this programming that's going on, even unconsciously. Not having a stream of consciousness through our intuition from the universe leads to unconsciousness and oblivion, in my opinion. And which is, we see that every day in ways, you know, even from the smartest people or the most intelligent people. And that's the holdup and the stumbling block, in my opinion, with science and scientific organizations, is that they're trying to quantify, even like astrophysicists or metaphysicists, or what's that other thing, that term that they used in all those different movies like 10 years ago, when the new age
metaphysical.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll use that. The stumbling block is that they're trying to quantify something that's not quantifiable. They're looking at it through a filter of science, facts, data, and all this stuff, and we certainly saw this during the pandemic. But they look at it through a perceptual filter of knowledge, right? And indoctrination and programming and social conditioning. But you'll never be able to see the expansive nature through our intuition. You'll never be able to access the intuition. I mean, not every scientist is Einstein. Einstein was special and gifted and extraordinary because he could see beyond the box of science. And I noticed that there's a lot of scientific entities or organizations or facts or data or whatever that's very quantified in this box. And for some reason, they believe that the perceptual filter of existence or the universe or the world or whatever, whatever the focus or subject of the study is or the experiment is always drawn in the lines of a box.
Yeah,
and they try and quantify through that funnel of that stream of consciousness through that perceptual filter of science. But you're only getting, less than 10% of what is actually existing in the universe.
I mean, it gets even worse, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean, people can do that. I mean, like, anybody can choose to do or see it however they want to see it, or experience it however they want to experience it. But it's a very limited perception.
I mean, and I've heard some funny stories of Einstein. I've heard some funny stories of Tesla. I've heard some funny stories about everyone. I mean, even if, and I don't want to argue about, if Einstein was real or not, or his theories are right or not, but these people, nobody's met them. You haven't met them. I haven't met them. All the information I've gotten about Tesla and Einstein and everything has come second, third, fourth, 10th hand into my life. Like, where have I gotten this information? Internet, TV, magazines I've read, perhaps a friend that talked to me about it. And to me, unless I've met the man, or I met the person, it's all suspect, because, there's so many filters and sieves that go between, like I've heard some stories on what a lot of the past philosophers have supposedly shared, even what's his face, the guy that talks supposedly about sexy things, the most recent psychologist, I forget his name now, the father of modern psychology, I forget his name. Pardon me? Freud, yeah. Even his stuff, I've heard, was bastardized from the original source of what he had originally been sharing with people, or he changed everything at the end of his life and said, wait a minute, I was wrong about all of this. Because as you get older, you and I both know, we really learn, pretty much what we've learned to date could almost be all thrown away, and you can start fresh. I mean, that's what, infinite knowledge is. You go, oh my goodness, I've been wrong. Like, I don't know about you, but when I look at, 10 years ago, I realized I was a fool. And that's what I meant when I said earlier that I'm a fool. And 20 years ago, I was a fool, and I've noticed that pattern in my life. So I'm sure 10 years from now, I'll notice how foolish I am today, because just more knowledge is coming. So, when it comes down to growing or getting out of the social construct, you have no choice, I would say, but to let your intuition lead, or else you're going to go into a corridor of someone else's opinion, like one way or another. Like everything you've heard about Einstein, everything I've heard about Einstein, like I said, I've never met the man, so I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of that is subjective too.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at it from a standpoint of the scientific perception or filters that are out there about a great number of things, it's all subjective. I mean, it's all based on the experiments or the data or the experience of the person that just happened to be doing that specific experiment. So it's subjective based upon their filtered interpretation
Yes.
And that's the thing, like, whether it's science or religion or politics or any of those things, education, the thing that's more often than not overlooked is the fact that all of these things that are creating the data streams or the factual streams or any of the other streams that are existing in social reality, it's all based on a subjective interpretation, right? It's not truth, you know?
Mm.
Like, for instance, the Bible wasn't written by God, the Bible was written by a bunch of men, and it was their interpretation and it was their subjective perceptions in regards to what was divine and what was holy and how do you live from a perspective of sacred life, you know. But the reality of it is that it was subjective and it was an interpretation, and worse yet, it was a man's interpretation, which doesn't really show up well in reality and hasn't for generations.
Yeah, I mean, even one language to the next. Like I'm learning Japanese, and when I say it means this, and then I talk with my wife, what does it mean? She goes, no, no, and it doesn't mean that. It means this. And I'll look at 3 dictionaries I have, and they'll all say something different. She goes, well, when I talk to people, it means this. And I'm going, it's interesting that like even the word commitment, to commit, right? In English, it's got a deeper meaning than in Japanese. It means to do a bad crime or something, right? To commit a crime. Right? When you look at this definition, so can you imagine something with the Bible that's supposedly about your eternal soul when they translate, one word to the next, and it could have like to me, a commitment is a good word, in Japanese it was a bad word, to do something horrible and or to determine a course of action for yourself to make a commitment. So it's very interesting, or to commit a crime, right? Exactly, to commit a horrendous crime. She goes, oh no, don't use that in Japan. That means, we've done a rape or you've done a murder or something like that, something. And, and I'm going, oh, okay. To me, a commitment's a good word, and to them, it's not. So isn't that interesting, even getting to what you said, how much further, and who knows how people thought even 2,000 years ago when they wrote, if it was indeed written, as a book, the Bible, these religious things, like, again, we weren't there. We don't know what experience they have. We don't know what's important to them. What's important to people 100 years ago isn't important to people now. So
Sure.
much of it so, and who knows what's coming, even,
Nor is it relevant or applicable in some
or
respects too.
that too.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think you bring up a good point too, like for instance, with the Bible, obviously there are some people that take it way too seriously, or they read into it, and it's not a bad thing to do that. I mean, if that's what your faith calls you into, then that's great. But the perspective that you brought up in regards to the subjective nature of things and the interpretations that we can draw from other people, because then it becomes like a ricochet effect of all these different interpretations. And as that occurs through all the phases of interpretations, it gets further and further from the truth of what the original intention was.
Right.
It's interesting to me that, I mean, all of these things that we're talking about are the distractions or the disruptions or the manipulations, is a better word for it, within social reality that takes us away from, or has our intuition leaving us
Mm.
and leading us. And so I feel that it's also about being quiet, silent,
Mm.
not just not talking, or quieting the mind or quieting the body or quieting the heart or whatever. It's just finding that space of silence within. Because, in my opinion, the language of the universe and our universality is, in this reality, is silence. And to be able to speak that language of universality, or to be able to begin to understand it, because even though through these talks that we have, or through the articles I write, or maybe some of the music I write, it gives the impression that I have this expansive understanding of things, right? But it's just my subjective opinion and my interpretation of something that's so far beyond myself and my capacity to understand, So it doesn't really, and I think that's what gets lost with a lot of people that are religious leaders or spiritual leaders or corporate leaders in businesses or things like that, that we are so desperate to accept or to follow somebody else besides ourselves, which is also taking us away from our intuition and our soul. that we're willing to sacrifice whatever potentiality that we might have because it's just too scary, or it's just too, in our minds, difficult to be able to make that connection for ourselves through our intuition for that understanding. So for me, intuition is experiential. It's
Definitely. Yeah.
almost purely experiential, in my opinion. And everything else that comes along with it, where you're trying to express it using your mind with words, as soon as you start to, and you and I've talked about this before, when I write articles, before I put the words down on the paper or whatever it is, it's so expansive and so beyond my own understanding, right? And then as soon as you start to funnel it into words, you lose most of it anyway.
Yeah,
It's
it's all
like,
gone. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the vicious cycle of living in a social reality as a human being and attempting to express the expansiveness and the multidimensionality of universality into this reality, let alone having it be something that is empowering enough for people to understand beyond their own experience.
I mean, even understanding that you only see 7 or 8% of light, and supposedly you're only using a small percentage of whatever is going on up here between your ears. I mean, again, if you're intelligent and you use like people don't use reason to reason, they don't use it properly, right? Because if you reason that out, you realize you don't really know anything. Right? By your reason, you can understand. You've got a lot more understanding to do, and
Sure. People don't like not knowing, and people don't like being wrong, so it's interesting to me, and kind of getting back to your point in regards to right and wrong, and how you were identifying that in your life. In my opinion, right and wrong is irrelevant when it comes to the universe and to intuition in general. It's completely irrelevant, because once you get into the right and wrong, you've already lost everything. You've lost your soul, you've lost your intuition, you've lost your heart. You've to the toxicity of thought. You get into it. That's the thing that I don't understand. I know debating is part of the political system, and debating is part of the mentality of humanity when it comes to working through topics and subjects and things, like with interviews like this, or with articles, or with you have one side, you have the other side, blah blah blah, whatever. That's the duality in the linear reality of social experience.
Sure.
Once you engage in that, like if somebody says something about you and you get pissed off about it, you're already engaged in that duality. You're gone. I mean, like, your universality, your intuition, your transcendent emotionality, it's all gone.
All of it. Yeah.
And then it's about being able to attempt to realign and reconnect and ground into that again, which is difficult. But again, it's only difficult to attempt to manifest it within a human being in the social reality. It's our nature before we come into this reality. Before, when we're a soul, when we're an energetic waveform in the universe as a part of the all, it's our nature. It's not difficult, but it's difficult because we're attempting to express it and empower it into this social reality. And this social reality is completely the antithesis of this universality.
For sure. Maybe it's as simple as leaving social reality. And then, a good definition of intuition: leave social reality.
Yeah, I do it every year. I mean, like, that's the whole thing with like we were talking about, with ceremony and vision quest, is like you have to take yourself out of it completely, in order to be able to start to get present and to start to understand yourself beyond how you relate or how you manifest yourself in society. And so that's why it's so important to not only release the programming and the conditioning, but you have to first start to identify and observe the fact that you do have programming. You first have to accept. I mean, it's like what they say in the AA meetings. You have to admit and accept that you have a problem. You have to accept that you have programming. because the programming is kind of like a mirror ball of filters that are built and constructed um, in many cases by ourselves, to be able to conform into the social reality. And once we have all of those things in place, then that stream of consciousness is not flowing into our experience or into our being.
Yeah, I think it's like living in a ball that's a mirrored walls in a ball, right? How people live their lives, right? So, if that's going on, you can't help, you could be infinitely fascinated, because, you put two mirrors together, you see an endless reflection. I mean, that used to fascinate me when I was younger. I would look in my parents' washroom and go, oh, you put a mirror back here and you can see infinite reflections of yourself.
Oh,
But to me, I would say that's how everyone's living. They've got this TV in front of their mind, in front of their thoughts, in front of the media, and then in front of who knows what's going on between their ears. So, endless potential for nonsense.
well, and a lot of the times I feel that the programming and the conditioning that we go through in social reality and the institutionalized domains that we are forced to participate in and engage in ultimately leads to us becoming the copies, not the originals of ourselves, and it has us become more reactive, and within that reactivity, we become regurgitators of the programming.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's important to observe within the programming domain of the experience and existence of humanity, is to understand that how much of it that you're sharing is a regurgitation of somebody else's subjective interpretation that
Right.
may or may not even be relevant to what your experience is or the person you're speaking with's experience is. And if you have, and I know that we're talking a lot, so this maybe it doesn't apply to this, but if you have somebody in your life that talks a lot, chances are it's the programming that's talking more so than the actual intuition or the soul. And that's why I got into a practice. And you and I've talked about this before about listening.
Mm,
And communication is listening is at the heart of communication.
mm,
When you're listening, you're being silent,
mm,
and you're also practicing being focused on the person that is speaking. And that ultimately transforms and transcends the resonance that goes on not only between you and the person you're listening to, but also within. You're transforming your resonance within so that you're not just listening to the person, you're also listening to your own intuition in the universe. And ultimately, and this is what happens when people have those conversations that are expansive and explosive, that are extraordinary conversations. There's that connection that you can have, and you and I've had this before many times, where you have one person that's listening so intently and focused on the other person, and there's a resonance that generates
mm,
between the two people in the universe, and then it becomes like this circle of understanding and
mm.
experience, more so than just like a regurgitation of facts and data and all this, you know, social reality construct dynamic.
Maybe that's a simple definition of meditation. Because when you're
Yeah.
listening, you can't help but be meditating.
Oh, absolutely. And then a lot of people have a struggle. I mean, people that are programmed or have programmed themselves, they have a struggle with meditation because their mind is in control of their being,
Mm,
or their body is in control of their being, you know. And it's rare that, in some women I've met and am related with in my life, they have an awareness on emotional level, and it's a very natural thing, and it's a very powerful thing. Men obviously, they struggle with being able to have that same awareness and understanding of emotionality than women do, just by nature. At least that's what I'm going to say. So, but I think that within all the dynamics of our being, and the instinctual, the intellectual, the emotional, the intuitive, the universal, the soul level, all that, it's all about balance and finding the equilibrium between all of those different domains of our being, of our existence. And so beyond all of the things that we've already talked about is to be able to find that equilibrium within
Yeah.
themselves.
Something that's helped me a lot as I've chatted with you over the last couple of years, and my wife is learning lady talk, as she calls it, right? Not having English as a first language and getting a direct definition of things. It's helped me drastically in understanding that, men maybe talk to be right or to build to something, and women chat to feel better, as she says, to get their emotions out, just to express their life. They're not looking for any answers, right? So if you listen, as you say, you'll hear a lot more than if you're talking or trying to solve a problem, because a reality or a dream is being expressed. If a lady is depressed or upset, everything's horrible, right? She won't love you. If something's bad in her life, right, or if something is good in her life, she'll love everything. And that's part, I think, of the emotionality that you mentioned, in that it shows you a different way to perceive. It's the best way I'll put this. Because obviously there's men and women, regardless of what is pushed these days, as I would say, the only two perspectives that are possible in these bodies, no matter how muddy the water seem to be getting. And, that gives you the ability to understand that, there's a reason we have these two polar ways of everything, right? Whether it's sexuality or creative or sensuality, as you said, or even the way people go about deciding what's important to their lives, right? Where men want to build something big and ladies just want to protect the family. And I know I'm like making things a lot simpler than they generally are, but our chat can only go so long today. So perhaps that is a good way, and it's something I want to explore myself, and maybe another conversation or chat we'll have is how women and men can help each other through the development of this intuition, by seeing how each looks at reality and how each brings their own intuition into play, and how that helps or hinders relationship, and from a microcosmic level to a macrocosmic level.
For sure. Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of one of the things that I got out of, because part of the process of writing for me is to reread and revise and edit and all that stuff, to be able to try and have it be, or attempt to have it be, something that's very clear and understandable, to the best of my ability as a human being. That the observation I made is that we, on a whole, in social reality, we have superficial relativity between us in most cases. And that's mainly because when we are relating on a daily basis in an ordinary fashion, or through the mundanity of our realistic experience, we aren't connected to our intuition. We're not being empowered by our soul. So that's what creates the dynamic in the environment in social reality, where we are having superficial relativity, and it's kind of like pinballs bouncing off of each other, in many respects. But when we do have a connection with our intuition, we have an authentic connection, an authentic relativity. And it's something that's so transcendent beyond just two people talking or related. Something like a subject. Like if we were sitting here talking about politics, yeah, that's very nice, but it's only going to go to a certain level. It's not going to be expansive and consciousness raising, and ultimately it doesn't really do anything. That's the thing that I don't understand about the political arena, is how so many people get so engaged and so emotional and so intellectual and even instinctually reactive about it, but it doesn't serve anybody. It's like one of those vortexes of energy in awareness in our reality that entraps us into engaging in something that's very dualistic in nature. But when we are connecting through our heart with our intuition to the universe, and we're having these conversations with authentic relativity, something expansive and explosive and remarkable happens. And so I try and I attempt and intend with almost every step of my day to have those conversations. And if I'm not having those conversations, more often than not, I'm not talking. I'm listening. I'm being silent. I'm trying to practice, or attempting to practice, or intending to practice being connected with the universe through the intuition.
Best definition I've ever heard of politics was arguing over which side of a piece of poo to pick up and not get dirty.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then to me that I go, okay. And I often wonder, as I said, why I'm having an experience, right? Because that will bring my intuition out, whether it's especially the horrible ones, be having whatever, something I don't like, or an angry one, or one that's intrusive on my peace and quiet. And I'll go, why am I having this experience? What am I here to learn? Like, why is there a machine outside my window that goes on too much and bothers me? I go, maybe it's telling me it's time to move and leave the city, right? Instead of getting angry. Right. So I'm using my intuition to inform, let's say, the potential for my life to get better, by how I want to live my life, not by anybody telling me, like you said, the social construct saying this is how life gets better, save $10 more, or go out for a fancier meal, or get a faster car, or whatever. But, what my hearts or my guts is saying, how would your life get better now? And, for me, like you said, it all comes down to breathing, quiet, peace. And so that I can bring out the best of why I'm here, even, why I came into this body, why I decided to, be in this so-called reality, and what I can bring forth that will not help other people, at least help me to be happy in my movements towards, I'd like to leave this place better than I found it. I think maybe most men do, if they're really with their hearts.
Sure. Yeah. And I think politics specifically is very symbolic. And the one hope that I have that may hopefully come as an epiphany or an insight to all of us is that politics is symbolic as a reminder of the power we acquiesce every day of our lives. We become engaged in politics, because politics, any political leader in this world, they express artificial power. They don't have authentic power. They just express artificial power, because when people enable that artificial power through their vote, or through their attention, or through their focus, or through their debate, or whatever, it should be a reminder to them that that is the experience or expression of them giving their personal power away.
Sure. I mean, before you should let anyone lead you, I would say you should spend at least a week in their company, get to know them, get to trust them, before you go, you can lead me. You go, well, maybe you should have a few dinners with this fellow or this lady, go out to eat, see how they are with your children, whatever, sit down and sing a song. I don't know, something to get a good feeling about who this person is before you go, I trust you with my life and my potential and my future and my children. And that's just so banal. I can't even express without getting angry, and I don't want to, how banal that is to trust someone you've never met, you've never fully engaged with. I mean, even you and I, we're talking here, and I learn more about you every time we have, our interactions. And, how can that not be that way with anybody or anything you put trust in your life?
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the whole topic of the conversation that we've had.
Yeah.
It's like, if the intuition is empowering our relativity and our experience, then we do have that remarkable, extraordinary connection. We do have that consciousness streaming experience of expression that starts to transform and transcend our experience on a whole different level. And that's, I'm glad that you brought up the intuition, because I feel that that's what's missing. If we look at it from a standpoint that, the heart is the gateway to the intuition, and then the intuition is the stream of consciousness that connects us with our soul and the universe, then that basically defines and determines the nature and the optimization of our relativity.
I would agree. It's a great definition. Maybe even we've come full circle in this chat we've had today, because, some people that say go to your head or go to your heart, and I've heard lots of arguments on that, but I think intuition trumps them all, so to speak, if you'll pardon my political inference by using that word, in that, because your intuition is beyond your heart, right? Your intuition is beyond your head. Your intuition is beyond anything. You get these ideas whole cloth, so to speak, like you mentioned way back at the beginning of this chat, it strikes you like lightning. And if you're intelligent, you see that it doesn't come from anywhere, but everywhere at the same time. And what do you do with that? Well, that's where intelligence comes in, I would say.
I guess it depends on, and it gets back to what you were talking about, subjective interpretation, because anything that you and I talk about, it's all subjective to our experience. But at least I can look at it from a standpoint that it's experiential.
Mm,
It's not based in the mind or the body or even the heart. It's
mm.
based on, and that's what I attempt to do, is I attempt to express myself with every aspect of my being.
Well, maybe you and I, as we talked about before we got on, we'll get a chance to take a walk in the woods together this summer. That'd be great. And
No, that would,
who knows what the world will tell us then.
yeah, absolutely, for sure.
All right. Well, is there anything you care to leave our viewers with? It seems we've come to a good talking of the heart as a doorway to intuition. I've never heard it put that way before, but I think it's the wisest thing you and I have said in this chat we've had today, to be
Yeah,
honest. From leaving to leading, and to seeing that your heart leads you to intuition, but it's not the be all and end all of the heart. It's the intuition, which is attached to the soul, as you mentioned, which is attached to the universe, which is attached to your infinite potential, which who wouldn't want to access that? It's a
sure.
rhetorical question here.
No, I think the one thing that I got most out of this conversation, and the resonance that we were able to arrive at and experience during this conversation, is that the intuition is a stream of consciousness that carries the resonance of our universality on the soul level into our heart, mind, and body, and ultimately expressed into this social reality in which we exist.
Yeah, my intuition is to take a hammer to this dream, this social reality, everything that's been told to me, and to smash it into little bits, and to see
Yeah.
what's there after the fact. I think I when I grew up as a boy, I was violent as the way all young boys are or can be. Wanting to break things, wanting to argue, wanting to get into fights, and now I see to put that to good use. Right, to
Sure.
smash my own stupidity into live. I think everyone can use their negatives to their own positives, and we probably already all have all the tools we need to access that intuition and to see where that's going to take us,
Without a doubt.
without a doubt. All right, I am Saums. I'll leave the link below. I even hate saying we got to leave the link below. I'd like to leave it above, but the way YouTube is set up, we have to leave them below. To his website, I will leave the link to our website, newagora.ca. Check it out. Iam stuff is there, his latest, the event. The next one will be there as well. There's all kinds of information we share every day, and I know because I'm the one sharing it, that can help you access your intuition, a better life, your way to be more magnificent as you choose to get off your behinds and do some actions for yourself through your own intuition.
Good one.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to chat with you again soon. I hope to see you soon, which would be great. And everyone, please like and subscribe, share it around, go to Iam site, check it out. And if anyone has any intelligent responses, and I'll underline those for us to share down or together in the future, please leave a note below and I'm happy to respond. All right, everyone. Thanks, Iam.
All right. You too, Lorenzo. Appreciate it.
Can't make me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom first is what I say.